Anderson Silva, once the name that embodied perfection. For nearly a decade, he stood as a living myth inside the UFC, rewriting history and turning elite fighters into mere spectators.
Anderson Silva broke the record for most consecutive wins in the UFC.
He made the top guys in the world look easy.
For a handful of years, no one could come close to him.
He broke the record for most consecutive title defenses.
People love finishes, and Anderson could always provide a finish at any moment.
Nobody can do what this guy can do. He's the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world.
And he had achieved that against some of the best fighters in the world.
Got us thinking he wasn't even human.
He's the greatest of all time.
No one was like even close. No one.
I think he's the greatest in any combat sport.
But how does a man once hailed as the greatest of all time find himself shattered beyond recognition? Was it pride, age, or fate delivering its cruel lesson? This isn't just the story of a fighter. It's the rise and fall of a legend. Every legend begins with a moment that changes everything. For Anderson Silva, that moment came in 2006. He dismantled Rich Franklin and seized the UFC middleweight crown. What followed wasn't merely dominance, it was transformation. Silva didn't just defend his title 10 times, he turned combat into performance art. When he stepped into the light heavyweight division, he played with opponents like a seasoned artist painting chaos. Each fight became theater, a blend of genius, confidence, and creativity. But when the world starts to see someone as untouchable, the danger begins when the man himself starts to believe it. Silva's legend wasn't just built on victory. It was built on humiliation, his taunts, his movement, the way he fought with his hands down. It was both mesmerizing and reckless. That front kick knockout of Vitor Belfort remains one of the most iconic finishes in MMA history. Miraculous last-minute submission over Chael Sonnen still echoes in highlight. Commentators like Joe Rogan hailed him as the greatest martial artist of all time. The aura around him was magnetic. Confidence turned spectacle, arrogance turned entertainment. By the end of 2012, it seemed impossible that anyone could beat Silva. Every empire eventually cracks. For Silva, that moment arrived in July 2013. Chris Weidman, a young and undefeated challenger, entered the octagon with little fanfare. Fans expected another Silva show, more taunting, more magic, another routine demolition. In round 2, as Silva leaned back once more, a perfectly timed left hook landed flush. 7 years of dominance vanished in an instant. The invincible was human again. But many wondered, was this just a fluke? A bad night? The UFC gave him a rematch to find out. What happened next was pure tragedy. The rematch was billed as redemption. Anderson Silva's chance to reclaim the throne he had once dominated for so long. Fans filled arenas with hope, eager to witness the legendary Spider weave his web once again and erase the memory of his first shocking loss to Chris Weidman. The world expected a comeback story for the ages, a triumphant return of the untouchable. But what unfolded was beyond tragedy. It became one of the most horrifying moments in MMA history. Early in the second round, Silva attempted a leg kick, a move he had executed thousands of times before with elegance and precision.
And he makes Anderson think because of that. The body.
Oh, nice.
He checked it.
No.
He hurt himself.
He hurt his leg.
He broke his leg. Anderson fractured his crazy ending. It went limp. It snapped right in half.
The impact was immediate and brutal. The sickening snap of Silva's leg echoed through the arena, his career suddenly hanging by a thread. For over a decade, he had been the predator, elusive, unstoppable, untouchable. Now, he lay vulnerable and broken, every fan watching in stunned disbelief. Over a year later, in 2015, Silva made his long-awaited return to the octagon, facing Nick Diaz. Just seeing him walk back into the cage was, for many fans, a miracle in itself. The Spider, scarred but not yet defeated, carried the hopes of those who still believed in the legend. In a hard-fought battle, Silva won by decision. Cheers erupted. It seemed as though the Spider had woven his web again, as though he had defied fate itself. Yet the joy was fleeting. Weeks later, the news broke. Silva had failed a drug test. The victory, celebrated as a triumph of will and courage, was overturned. The pristine image of a fighter who had once symbolized martial arts purity and brilliance was now forever tainted. Fans who had once idolized him began to question everything. Was his greatness ever authentic, or had it always carried a hidden flaw? The physical wounds from his catastrophic injury could heal, but the shadow of doubt, the creeping suspicion, cut far deeper than any broken bone ever could. With that revelation, a chapter of Silva's legend closed. From that point on, Silva's biggest opponent wasn't another fighter, it was time itself. He lost to Michael Bisping in a razor-close war in 2016, then accepted a short-notice fight against Daniel Cormier, showing courage, but falling short once again. Then came 2019, Silva versus Israel Adesanya, the new generation versus the old guard. Adesanya, who had idolized Silva for years, finally stood across from him. The student surpassed the master that night. It was poetic, but heartbreaking, and fans couldn't help but wonder, how many more losses could this legend endure before the curtain finally fell? No legend chooses their ending, and Silva was no exception. The once untouchable counter-striker now absorbed the punishment he used to deliver. From 2013 to 2020, he recorded only one official win. A staggering decline for one of the greatest ever. Even UFC President Dana White admitted it was painful to watch. In 2020, Silva and the UFC quietly parted ways. The end came not with a roar, but a whisper. To judge Silva's story solely by his losses would be to miss its essence. For nearly a decade, he turned violence into elegance, proving that MMA could be art. Fighters like Israel Adesanya, who now carry his torch, credit Silva for redefining what striking could be. Fans still replay his masterpieces, the front kick to Belfort, the submission of Sonnen, the effortless beauty of his dominance. Yes, Silva fell. But in doing so, he reminded the world that legends aren't made by perfection. They're made by how they rise, and how they endure even after the fall. His legacy isn't broken, it's human. And that humanity is what makes it eternal. Anderson Silva's story isn't just about victory and defeat. It's about artistry, mortality, and the inevitability of time. From dazzling knockouts to devastating injuries, he gave us moments that will live forever. His downfall wasn't caused by one punch, one break, or one mistake, but by the slow reminder that even gods must bow to time. Yet the inspiration he left behind will outlast every loss. Silva proved that martial arts are more than combat. They are creativity in motion. He showed that greatness isn't defined by never falling, and if you thought Silva's decline was dramatic, wait until you hear the story that came next.